Light Yagami was never the hero. He was never the savior. He was a ticking time bomb, and the Death Note was just the trigger. The moment he picked it up, it didn't change him, but instead, it exposed him. At the start of Death Note, Light looks perfect. Top grades, polite son, calm, disciplined, but perfection hides something dangerous. Boredom, and boredom mixed with superiority creates resentment. Light didn't hate criminals. He hated the world for not being worthy of him. When the notebook works, when the first criminal dies, notice something. He doesn't break down. He doesn't panic. He justifies. Instantly, that speed tells you everything. A normal mind hesitates. Light escalates. Within days, he's not testing power. He's declaring himself a god, not protector, not reformer, a god. That word was always inside him. The Death Note just gave him permission. Ryuk didn't whisper in his ear. He didn't manipulate. He didn't tempt. He watched, like a scientist observing a lab rat. And Light performed beautifully, because Light wanted an audience. Justice was never the goal. Then came L Lawliet. And for the first time, someone didn't fear him. Someone challenged him, publicly, calmly, confidently. And Light couldn't stand it. When the fake L appears on television, Light kills him instantly. Not strategically, emotionally. Someone mocked him, and he reacted. That wasn't God behavior. That was ego. Every move after that was louder. Killing FBI agents, manipulating investigators, controlling Misa, each step more ruthless, but also more desperate. Because now, it wasn't about cleansing evil. It was about winning, and winning requires opponents. Light needed L alive. He needed the battle, because without resistance, there's no validation. When L dies, most people think Light achieved godhood. No, that was the beginning of decay. Without L, there was no mirror, no equal, no pressure and power. Without pressure rots the mind. Light became comfortable, careless. He started enjoying performance, leading the task force, pretending to search for himself, smiling, smug, untouchable. That's when geniuses fall. Not at weakness, but at overconfidence. Years later, Nier enters, quiet, cold, emotionless. And Light dismisses him, because Nier doesn't look threatening. And arrogance blinds pattern recognition. Light's plans became theatrical, layered, complicated, dependent on perfection. But perfection doesn't exist. One variable, one unpredictable action, and the illusion cracks. The warehouse scene. This is where truth appears. Light stands tall, already celebrating, already declaring victory. Before it happens, that detail matters. He didn't wait. He needed them to know. He needed applause. When the notebook fails, watch him. He doesn't stay calm. He doesn't adapt. He fractures. His voice rises. His logic collapses. He screams that he is justice. He begs. He blames. The god mask shatters. And underneath was fear. Pure human fear. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The Death Note doesn't corrupt. It magnifies. It takes pride and turns it into tyranny. It takes intelligence and turns it into manipulation. It takes ego and removes limits. Light was doomed, not because he found power, but because he needed it. He needed to feel superior, needed to feel worshipped, needed to prove he was above humanity. And the moment you separate yourself from humanity, you lose it. Light didn't lose to L. He didn't lose to Nier. He lost to the version of himself that believed he could never lose. That's why this story feels so real, because the most dangerous villains aren't monsters. They're convinced they're right. And once someone believes, they are absolute justice. They stop questioning themselves, and the moment self-doubt disappears, collapse becomes inevitable. Light Yagami was never meant to win, because the Death Note was never the curse. It was his ego. And ego always demands a price. But we haven't talked about the most disturbing part. Light didn't just kill criminals. He started redefining what a criminal was. Petty thieves, people who opposed Kira, investigators. Eventually, anyone in his way. That shift is important, because once you justify killing evil, it becomes easier to label others as evil. And Light controlled the labels. That's dictatorship psychology. Absolute moral authority. Without accountability. Let's talk about isolation. The more Light gained power, the more isolated he became. He couldn't trust anyone, not his family, not the task force, not even Misa. He used people, discarded them, replaced them. That kind of mindset creates paranoia, and paranoia destroys clarity. A paranoid genius eventually sabotages himself. Look at his relationship with his father, Soichiro Yagami. His father believed in justice, real justice, due process, truth. Light manipulated even him. And when his father died, Light didn't break, he calculated. That's the moment where there was no humanity left. If you can weaponize your own father's death, you're no longer fighting for peace. You're protecting ego. Now here's something deeper. Light was terrified, not of prison, not of death, but of being ordinary. Before the Death Note, he was just another gifted student. After the Death Note, he was feared globally, worshipped secretly, discussed everywhere. Taking that away would mean going back to normal, and Light would rather die than be normal. That fear drove every reckless decision. And what about Ryuk? People think Ryuk was neutral, but he represents something: entropy, chaos. He drops the notebook and watches society tear itself apart. He laughs. Because humans with power always self-destruct at the end. Who writes Light's name? Ryuk, not Nier, not L. The god was killed by the spectator. That's symbolic. Power never belongs to you. It's borrowed, and it can be taken back instantly. And think about this. If Light truly wanted peace, he would have stopped once crime rates dropped. But he didn't. He kept going, because peace was never the finish line. It was control. That's why he was doomed, because control has no endpoint. It only escalates. By the time of the warehouse scene, Light wasn't fighting for a better world. He was fighting for his identity. If Kira loses, Light becomes nothing, and that kind of psychological attachment makes you irrational, which is exactly what happened. This wasn't a battle of intelligence. It was a slow psychological collapse, hidden under confidence, masked by genius, applauded by fear, and that's why Death Note is still powerful. Because it shows you don't need to be stupid to fall. You just need unchecked ego and unlimited power. But there's something even darker hiding underneath all of this. Light didn't just believe he was justice. He believed he was necessary. That's a dangerous mindset. Because when someone believes the world needs them, they stop seeing themselves as replaceable. And once you think you're irreplaceable, you justify anything. Lying, manipulating, killing, even sacrificing innocent lives. Because in your mind, the outcome matters more than the method. Think about how quickly society accepted Kira. Crime dropped, fear increased, and people began worshipping a faceless executioner. That says something disturbing, not about Light, but about humanity. People don't always want justice, they want security, even if it costs freedom. Light understood that, and he used it. That's what makes him terrifying. He wasn't just fighting detectives, he was shaping culture. Now imagine if Light had one. No Nier, no exposure, no warehouse scene. What would the world look like? A silent planet, where one unseen figure decides life and death. No trials, no appeals, just names and heart attacks. At first, it would look peaceful, but peace built on fear. Fragile, because the moment fear disappears, so does obedience. And Light would need to escalate again. Stricter judgment, faster executions, broader definitions of evil, until eventually, the line between criminal and inconvenience disappears. That's the final layer. Power doesn't stabilize, it expands. And Light's ideology required infinite expansion, which means infinite conflict, which means inevitable collapse. It was mathematically unsustainable. Even if Nier never existed, Light's system would have eventually consumed itself, because it depended entirely on one human mind. And no human mind is perfect. The irony is brutal. Light wanted to become a god. But gods don't panic. Gods don't scream. Gods don't bleed out on staircases. In the end, he died exactly how he feared. Not as a ruler, not as a savior, but as a criminal, running alone, begging for more time, and the only one who answered was Ryuk writing his name, calmly, almost bored, like closing a book. That final image isn't about defeat. It's about reality, reclaiming control. The world kept spinning. Crime didn't disappear. Humans didn't evolve. Life continued, without Kira, which proves the final truth. He was never necessary. He was temporary. And temporary gods always fall.